Hello and welcome all of you to the second session of second day of APAC Global Education and Skill Conclave. The first day had the school track. There we saw the presence of school leaders from various parts of the country and also the EdTech leaders who are providing solutions to various schools, and various points have been discussed yesterday on the various aspects of school education, be it digitization, IT, opening of schools in the new normal. Policymakers thought everything was discussed yesterday in the school track. And today, this is the beginning of the second day of Global Education and Skill Conclave. The second is primarily focusing on higher education and skill development. And tomorrow also we have a session, a full day sessions on skill development and higher education. Today we are the inaugural of the second day. There we saw the presence of eminent leaders. Honorable Minister Dhan Singh Rawat from Uttarakhand was present in the inaugural, along with Suresh Prabhu, former Union Minister, Government of India. He was there in the inaugural. Also, we had two diplomats from Embassy of Israel in India. Honorable Ambassador were present. Also, Honorable High Commissioner of Australia, he was present in the inaugural, along with 5 to 6 policymakers from various states, like states of Kerala, states of Madhya Pradesh, states of Uttar Pradesh, and also from Government of India, along with EdTech leaders. We got their perspective as well. And now we have come to a very important panel discussion of this day. The session will be primarily talking about the road ahead for higher education in India. What are the impact of national education policy? What will be the challenge to implement those policies? And for that, we have galaxy of speakers. I can say that I can take the liberty of saying that we have galaxy of speakers of higher education fraternity from India with us for this session. Let me introduce to all of you. We have with us Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, Provost, HSNC University, President Nardeco, and co-founder and MD Hiranandani Group. We welcome Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani.
Thank you very much.
We also have with us Vineet Gupta, founder and trustee, Ashoka University, and also is part of Palaksha University. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Vineet Gupta.
Thank you.
Also, we have with us Dr. Madhu Chitkara, Pro-Chancellor, Chitkara University. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Chitkara. We also have with us Dr. S.S. Mantha, Chancellor, Dell University, and he needs no introduction. He's the former chairman of AICT. Thanks for joining us, Dr. S.S. Mantha. We also have with us Dr. Kunwar, Shekhar, Vijendra, Chancellor, Shobhit University. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Vijendra.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have with us Rajita Kulkrani, President, Sri University. Thanks for joining us, Rajita Kulkrani.
Thank you.
We have with us Dr. Rupa Vasudevan, Chancellor, B.E.S.T Innovation University. Dr. Rupa Vasudevan, we welcome you.
Thank you.
We have with us a very eminent leader from the industry, Mr. Tabrez, Ahmad, Group Director, Government Affairs and Public Policy, Health Technologies. We welcome Mr. Tabrez Ahmad. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
We also have with us Professor A. Govardhan, Pro Vice Chancellor and Rector, Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Hyderabad. And also we have with us Professor Naseem, Registrar, Telangana University, Nizamabad. Both Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Hyderabad and Telangana University, Nizamabad are representing Government of Telangana universities. With this, let me start the panel discussion. I think we have been joined by Dr. Madhu Chitkara, Pro-Chancellor, Chitkara University. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Madhu Chitkara.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. With this, let me begin the panel discussion. We all know that Government of India has recently passed the National Education Policy 2020. A lot of expectations have risen out of this new policy. My first question to all of you will be that there are a lot of things have been said in National Education Policy vis-a-vis higher education. One of the important part is the setting up of Higher Education Commission of India. Will that be helpful? Also, National Education Policy talks about taking GER from 26 to 50% by 2030. That's also an ambitious target. But my question to you will be first that what is your take on national education policy vis-a-vis higher education scenario in India, especially when we are all living in new normal? Let me take a perspective from Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani, Provost, HSNC University, and President Nardeco, and co-founder and MD, Hiranandani Group. Over to you, Dr. Hiranandani.
A very good afternoon. It's such a wonderful thing to be in the company of such eminent educationists and yourself. So thank you for the invitation. The national education policy has come only after 34 years. So nobody really considered this to be important enough for the purposes of revision, while the entire pedagogies in terms of education has taken a total turnaround. Second, technology has taken root to roost. Everything is now based on the basis of new technologies by way we are communicating, including what we are talking now and what has happened during the COVID, and of course, what will happen in the post-COVID world. I think the most important aspect of it has been 3 or 4 important facets. First, they have looked at a multidisciplinary facet. And I think this is most important of it all, because in the future, jobs are going to be not in a single line of order. In fact, in certain cases, we don't even know what are the jobs that we are preparing for ourselves 10 years from today. So the learning to learn rather than learning on the basis of factum is going to make a change. The second, the multidisciplinary idea of getting a holistic view has become extremely important. People who are called for jobs really ask the student about the all-round necessity of getting skill set which are far beyond the subjects that we talk about. So I think that is the second thing which I think is going to make a world of a change. The third part of it, which I feel is extremely important, is the fact that you could drop off at any time and get different parts in the education process. So if you drop off after the first and get into a job, you get a certificate. If you drop off on the second, you get a diploma. If you drop off on the third, you get a degree. And on the fourth, you do research and you do a postgraduate issue, an honors degree. All these aspects of it are making a new change in terms of the thought process of what education is going to deliver at the end of the day, rather than education almost being an end to itself. And I think that's very, very important in terms of it. However, we have seen there are good policies and there are good laws. What is actually needed is implementation. You've asked an excellent question. Is the National Education Commission, because of its new nomenclature and consolidation, going to be better than the regulatory systems which existed today? My answer is very simple. It doesn't matter what is the system. It matters of what the leadership will bring forth and how the leadership will be able to make changes in the situation to work on the ground to make it for the students, for the persons, for the teachers, and for the teaching finished. And the last but not the least, continuous learning. We have now learned too much. I'm now only 70. In the last 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, what I have learned is more than what I have learned in the last 30 years. It's technology which has made the change. It is my ability to reach out which has made the change. It's my ability to be able to communicate and receive communication which helps me to learn, which is relevant to my requirements. So all this is important. So the national education policy is an enabler. Now it is up to the government, whether the center, states, the institutions that are being created, the private and the public sector, how do we actually perform and really do it? And to what extent will government enable 2 segments? The segment of quality at the top end and reaching the social masses at the other end. We need both. We can't have iconic institutions alone, though they are needed. And we cannot only reach to the poorest of poor and not create iconic institution. So we have a great enabler in terms of policy. I must congratulate the government on bringing it. I must congratulate the educational institutions which are taking it lovelily in a beautiful manner in order to get it implemented and do it. But success and failure will depend on both the sides. How do we take it? How do we implement it? And whether the government of the day will actually use it proactively or continue to be bureaucratic as it has happened in the past. But wonderful to have the new policy, a great enabler and a wonderful platform.
Thanks, Dr. Hiranandani, for giving a very insightful perspective on the national education policy vis-a-vis higher education. And if I take a crux of what you have said, before I move on to the next speaker, I think what very important point you have said that national education policy is an enabler. It's up to us, it's up to the stakeholders, how well we can leverage that enabling tool called national education policy to bring the transformation in the higher education scenario in India. Thanks a lot. With that, I move to Mr. Vineet Gupta, founder and trustee, Ashoka University and Palashka University. Mr. Gupta, your thought on national education policy and its effects on higher education scenario in India.
Thanks, Souvik, and my apologies, but I'm traveling, but I've stopped and
no, we are all now used to this new normal, working from home or in
I thought I'll
mobile.
get to wherever I
connected
have.
in the digital mode.
So, well, let me start by saying, and you know, I want to congratulate the government on the boldness of the national education policy. And I'm in agreement with Mr. Hiranandani when he says, look, a lot is going to depend on this is a policy, and what gets translated into rules and regulations, a lot will depend on that. Now, having said that, you know, policies are intent statements, policies indicate the way the government is thinking. And in that sense, I think the boldness of the policy needs to be congratulated. And I do want to touch on a few aspects, some that both of you have already spoken about, but, you know, really sort of also elaborating what they mean. You know, the gross enrollment ratio, there's conversation about taking it from 26% now to 50% by 2035 in 15 years. Now, what does that mean, the enormity of this? This means that we will have to more than double our higher education capacity in the next 15 years. Now, just imagine whatever we've done in the last 70 years since independence, 40,000 colleges, 1,000 universities, and we have a very young population, which means if we double GER, we have to more than double the higher education capacity, which is a huge challenge, humongous challenge, right? Now, creating that sort of capacity, I think just the idea of it and the fact that government is willing to take it on means there will be huge expansion in Indian higher education. I think parts of it is already happening. More than 65% of Indian higher education is already in the private sector. So in some sense, it is a tremendous opportunity both for the government to expand its institutions and for the private sector, for new universities to come up, for new colleges to come up, to reimagine education. You know, there are not many countries in the world today where new universities are being set up. The enrollment rates in the West are declining. Whether you take the United States, you take Western Europe, you take Japan, those countries are increasingly dependent on students from outside to really fill up their universities. In that sense, you know, we are in a lucky situation. I mean, we are one of the few places where new universities, new colleges can be set up. New institutions bring new innovation, especially in the post-COVID era. There's already conversation on what new universities can look like. So in that sense, I think it's a tremendous opportunity for India. I think the question is, what will our new institutions look like? What is the scope for reimagination? What is the scope to do things differently? So I think first is this. I think this is a boldness of this idea. It's a simple statement to expand GER, but huge implications on the way our capacity could be. I think second, and Mr. Hiranandani touched on it, you know, really the whole idea of multidisciplinary education, courses become interdisciplinary. If you look at the higher education landscape across the world, this is the way higher education has moved. And not only from the perspective of jobs, where workplaces do need students and professionals with a wide variety of skills, but I think also from a perspective of education itself. You know, very few students have singular interests. Students have multiple interests. And the fact that your degree is siloed in a particular discipline, I think as an idea is already outdated. So I think it's higher education being multidisciplinary, allowing interdisciplinary courses, allowing credits to be transferred. I think these are all steps in the right direction. And within that flows the idea of making master's degrees from 2 years to 1 year. Undergraduate degrees could be from 3 years to 4 years. These are bold steps. I mean, I can say when Ashoka started in 2014, we wanted a 4-year undergrad degree. And we worked with the government to try to make it happen. The regulations at that point didn't allow. And now that this is happening and will perhaps open the doors is very, very welcome. So I do want to say that just in its intent, this is a huge step. The idea of internationalization, the fact that many more students can come from outside, study in India. The idea that more universities from outside can come and set up campuses here. Now, I'm not sure how much of this will happen. For a foreign university to come and set up campus, and a lot will depend on the detail. How does that investment come? Those investments will also be governed by FCRA rules. There has been some tightening. So there are some, some of these laws just don't stand alone. They go hand in hand. So whether foreign campuses actually come or not, but the intent of the government to encourage them, the intent that international students come and study in India, I think that again is a big policy statement. I think third, from the perspective of governance and regulation, the idea that there is a single regulator, the Higher Education Commission. Again, I think Mr. Hiranandani very rightly said, now what is the mandate of this new commission? What are the rules and regulations that this new commission will frame is yet to be seen. But the idea that multiple regulators are replaced by one single regulator is a nice one, right? We would all welcome that. We would all love that. So I think even in that concept, it is a good suggestion. I hope when the government sets up the commission, the rules and regulations in the way they are drafted are in the spirit in which the policy has been made. The fourth, huge thrust on online education. Again, private universities have been talking for a long time. And most private universities on the panel here would agree with me. We were allowed to conduct courses in the classroom, but still regulation did not allow private universities to offer online courses. The pandemic sort of changed that. Suddenly, there was only online happening. There was no chance for physical education to happen. In the world, even if it gets normal after the pandemic, I think there is a realization that online education has a lot of value to offer. Whether it can replace classroom totally is yet to be seen. But models where online will play an active part, where online will support physical education, where online will do some things much better than what physical education does. I think those models are here to stay. So it's very welcome. So the policy sort of takes a leaf out of the COVID crisis and really puts a huge emphasis, a deep emphasis on online education. And I think the last is really the impetus on research, the fifth one, which I want to talk about. We've often complained that Indian universities don't figure in top institutional rankings world over, maybe 2 universities in top 100. And this is the pet peeve of media, especially. There would be stories coming out. And if one has to dig deeper and find out why. I mean, I personally do believe India has done an excellent job in terms of education. In terms of the education that our higher educational institutions impart, we've done a phenomenal job. We have outstanding institutions, our universities, IITs, IIMs. But on the dimension of research, I don't think we've done as well. And these international rankings, if you pick any of them, they are heavily weighted in terms of research. Now, research as an area in any country which has done very well on research has largely been funded by the government. So the idea of setting up a National Science Foundation, which is very similar to what happens in the US or other countries, is again extremely welcome. It means the government puts research right top and center. So again, how much of it gets implemented, in what spirit, is yet to be seen. But as an idea, again, it's extremely bold. And I think in the end, I would like to close that the government does talk about raising GDP spend from a little under 3% now to 6%. That again is hugely welcome. I think we can do that. The entire higher education landscape in the country can transform. So great policy. I personally feel it's extremely bold. It talks of absolutely the right thing. I don't think the higher education sector could have talked of something better. It articulates all the right principles. The question is how much of it gets implemented and in what form. But I believe even if the government can implement half of what is written in the policy, the Indian higher education is set to change. Thank you.
That's a very important part raised by Mr. Vineet Gupta when he said that even if the half of national education policy is implemented, that will change the higher education scenario in India. We all wait for that, whether how much it's being implemented and how much change we can see. And as you rightly said, that GER increase means doubling the higher education capacity. And that can be a challenge, but that can be seen as an opportunity as well. And that can actually transform the higher education scenario in the country. And also, when we talked about that shift from physical classes to online mode of imparting education, as we all know that sometimes it takes years to change things, sometimes it takes weeks to change things. I think pandemic has ensured that that mental shift of shifting from brick and mortar to the digital mode of imparting education has been enormous in India and globally as well. With this, I will move to Dr. Madhu Chitkara, Pro-Chancellor, Chitkara University. Dr. Chitkara, your take on national education policy. Is it going to be a game changer for higher education in India? Your thoughts on that?
I think so much is covered by Dr. Niranjan and Mr. Vineet Gupta. So I think just the points which is uncovered by them, and I think we should not repeat again and again. The one thing which is very significant about the NEP 2020 is that they have proposed to set up a Higher Education Commission of India, HECI. And I think this is a single overarching umbrella body for higher education. They have excluded medical and legal education from it. I think if you see the pros of this point where they have put this into action. So in a country like India, so to have a uniformity in educational standards, a single umbrella body for, it was a requirement. It was, we were waiting for it to come because that was giving a burden to the students. And multiple independent governing bodies led to many standardization issues across the institutions. And along with it, you can say any improvement plan to be implemented in this higher education domain took years. So as well said by Dr. Niranjan that it took 34 years to come to the next policy. And so if the proposed plan, whatever they have suggested, and if we have to implement it, so if it is implemented, uniformity and coordination for all institutions in this country will be much easier. And process changes will be easily implemented and effective too. So I think if this happens, so this will be done. But if you see the cons of it, standardization will always be a challenge for all of us because of, in India, because of the socio-economical and geographical diversity in our country. So the process of standardization will need careful planning and implementation. So it's very important that how we plan, execution will be done if we want to implement this. So proper planning is required at every vertical. So I think that is to be seen by all of us. And the second point which they have mentioned, and I think not mentioned by the other two speakers, that which is a highlight of the NEP 2020 is to introduce a single university entrance exam conducted by the National Testing Agency, NTA. They have said that we have to form NTA, National Testing Agency, where there will be a single university entrance exam. Now, earlier to seek admission across various universities, a student had to go through the burden of multiple examination, plus the very difficulty level of question papers across many central universities. So now if this plan is implemented, a student can give one entrance exam and get saved from the burden of many examinations. So at the same time, the question papers level will be standardized. So error-free NTA conducts it and the admission process will be streamlined. Now, if you see that when the implementation will be coming and when we are sitting all from the university, when we have to implement it. So for taking one entrance test, we have to double sure. Now it will become a challenge for all of us that evaluating parameters and assessment items are well moderated, considering the diversity of students and the school education system. So now we have a mixed ability group and we have a different school education systems. And when coming to the single examination system, so we should be very sure about it, that how to implement it. And first, I can say that we must have to bring them at one level. So now equal education for all will drive it through otherwise. And I see many challenges are there if we have to do this. And the third, which I want to mention, if I have a time for doing it, that with this policy, and I have mentioned this so many times, and I was very impressed by this point when they added into the NEP 2020, that gross enrollment ratio for the country, as well as the multiple entry and the exit options at the undergraduate level, I think that was mentioned by Dr. Niranjan also. So this was very, and the credit system. So they are saying that you will have a credit bank, and that bank will have your credits into that bank. You can store those credits in the bank, and wherever you want to use those credits, you can use it. Now how, because it's a very, this point, if we want to implement in our universities, there are many pros and cons of doing it. So whatever is mentioned in the national policy, we have to be sure about that how at our university levels we plan seeing the different diversity groups and how to follow those things. Very importantly, they said that the focus on having multidisciplinary college in every district by 2030. And I think this is a very promising idea, that we should have this type of structure till 2030 in every district. Now, it will renew the country's focus on arts, humanities, and multidisciplinary form of education. That means that will ensure the students to skill well in the career ahead. So I think remote learning of concepts has kept our students very far behind in terms of the skills so far. So now this pandemic, we always were saying that when it started and the lockdowns were done, I think everybody in the education sector were worried about their teaching learning processes of the students. And we have not already checked that how our technology will be used here. But I think this point of challenge, which that was a challenge for all of us, and we all, I think we should be proud of all the teachers in the whole world, that how they changed themselves into the online mode immediately within a week of time. And I think now the online mode, I think Vineet was telling about it, that how we should be allowed to go for online courses. So UGC has already told that 20+% of the courses can be given online to the students. So it will always be a learning which will be hybrid learning, where online and offline will work. So I think this is NEP will come as a great help to the educational institutes, and we all should be ready for it to implement it. And I think all of us have started doing in bits and pieces of this policy. We have started working on it, and we have started implying it to the different disciplines. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I wish all of us to use this NEP 2020 in a better manner to make the system much better. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chitkara. You have given a different perspective than your earlier speakers, that you have touched upon the other parts of NEP which can be game-changing for future education scenario in India, especially when we talk about setting up of a Higher Education Commission of India. That's a good step in the right direction, and also setting up multidisciplinary college in each and every district. And as you rightly said, that might be the game changer because some focus will be shifted out of science and technology, rather also multidisciplinary curriculum will be encouraged a lot, so that grooming can happen from the school and higher education spectrum itself. Thanks to Dr. Chitkara, and as you said, that all the university stakeholders have to come together to make that change happen, and I'm sure that this kind of discussion will have that outcome to find ways to move to the right direction for future. Thanks, Dr. Chitkara. From Dr. Chitkara, I'll move to Dr. S.S. Mantha, Chancellor, Care University. He has seen both the sides, I guess, and I think a very interesting perspective will come from Dr. Mantha. Dr. Mantha, your take on higher education in India vis-a-vis the national education policy.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone there. Yeah, I mean, Colin Powell once said, if we all agree, some of us will become redundant. So in that, taking a cue from there, I mean, the policy has great content and the intent is extremely good. The intent of reforms, positive reforms, is certainly there. But the challenges, like the earlier speaker said, is in the implementation. So what I'll try and do is look at some of the points that have been discussed as within the policy and see what could be the challenges around them. And so thereby trying to give a different perspective. Now, first of all, education is in concurrent list. So which means there is a role for the center and there is also a role for the states. And the states have to implement. So therefore, when a synergetic implementation has to happen, both have to be on the same page. So if there are challenges with implementation, then there can be some kind of problems in realizing the outcomes. Now, having said that, the education policy talks about the about GER being raised to 50%. I mean, we had an education system that we could manage to get a GER of 25 today. Like somebody said, there are more than 1,000 universities, 45,000 institutions, and so on. Now, in that, the institutionalization of skills never happened. So therefore, there was a problem at that end. The idea of multi-point entry and exit is very, very good in terms of a reform. And the academic credit, an academic bank of credits is also a challenge, very, very good idea. But having said that, one should look at why should a student drop out after, let's say, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatever. Maybe his financial condition is not good. So he needs to go out and work. And at the same time, his time spent in the institution must be credited for that. So this reform does allow him to do that. It allows him to accumulate credits for the time that he has spent. And it also allows him to go out after 1 year, 2 years, and so on with a certification, degree, diploma, all that. And after 4 years, he probably gets an honors degree as well. Now, having said that, this has to be connected with the employment market. Now, if I leave after 1 year, after 12, with a certificate in hand, I should be able to get into a certain job role that is defined by the industry. Otherwise, what am I going to do dropping out after 1 year? What use is that certificate for me? The same applies after 2 years, 3 years, and so on. So the challenge really is in creating a curriculum which actually connects the employment with the appropriate job roles. So therefore, unless the industry is also as dynamic as a reform expects the education sector to be, there can be real issues in actually designing the kind of curriculum and so on. It happens in the National Skill Qualification Framework, which is similar. You have multiple certification levels, you have skills and education built together, and then the implementation has been a problem area, a concern, and after 5-6 years of implementation also there are still problems in realizing the outcomes. What was the basic problem there? It was not, the job roles, though they were defined, it was not connected with the kind of training that is happening. So that's one point that I wanted to say. Otherwise, there are several advantages of accumulating credits, and that various speakers have actually spoken about. Now coming to 25% to 50% of GER, one can actually realize that not in 15 years, but probably in 5 years time. But a great amount of infrastructure will need to be done, not in terms of building brick and mortar and so on. Some regulatory changes will be required, and some amount, the COVID pandemic has shown us that the development cycle, the implementation cycles, they have all been compressed, and people have taken to online education within a very short time, probably a week's time, 10 days time, they were all going online, and the students were connected in some way. Now, assuming that this can be expanded into a concept called virtual university, where your online education, the certifications, the multi-point entry, all this can be combined together, collaborated on the content, collaborated on the interactive sessions which the experts have to do, then, and going towards a concept called virtual university, it can be achieved. But again, like I said, it's an implementation issue, and people must seriously look at that. Now when I say that, the collaboration aspect becomes extremely important. Now, in an online medium, when I talk about virtual university, in order to realize that 50% GER and so on, obviously you can't build another 40,000 institutions and maybe create another 500 universities, and so it's just not workable. So therefore, the basics of conducting online programs like learning management systems, content that's required, all this will have to be facilitated by the governments, and therefore certain amount of funding is required in that context. Now, the earlier speaker also referred to a common entrance test and so on. Now, in principle, yes, it's a very good idea. People will have only one test to give and so on. But go down to the acts that the universities are set up with. Every single university is an autonomous entity. Every single university has the freedom to create their own curriculum. Where is that academic freedom that's being looked at when I say that I have just one common entrance test, and therefore, which also means that the back end, the curriculum will be common and things like that. Now, that also needs to be really looked at. But the idea is extremely good in terms of facilitating students and so on. Now, the single regulator issue. I've been a part of the regulatory system. In fact, I've been part of the government all my life, except the current assignment where I am on the other side of the, other side of the table. Now, in as much as saying that regulation must become single, single entity, pushing all the regulators together and so on. For example, if you look at the education and the expansion of education, technical education has grown. Your industry connect has happened essentially because of technical education. And therefore, there are several facets that have developed of technical education and so on. Now, combining that with the rest of the education, there is a possibility of bringing in, again, standardized regulations, standardized, implementations and so on, which can actually affect the dynamics or the dynamism of that part of the education system. It's something that we have built over 70 years. It's possible that the common denominator will start operating. Now, in that, I just am throwing up a question. Why is it that law education and medical education is kept out of, if at all the entire idea is to bring the education, higher education sector together, why were they kept out? Now, that's one point that we all need to really understand. Now, as far as research is concerned, there's the earlier universities. If you know the history of how universities have come about, they were all multidisciplinary. They were all interdisciplinary, intradisciplinary departments. Most of the departments were there on the campus and so on. Over a period of time, because of the lack of funding or lack of interest on part of the students, lack of connect with the industry, some of the departments have closed down. And slowly we are now moving into specialized universities, maybe a university for different disciplines and so on. Now, in the new policy, we are again talking of bringing in multidisciplinary research, putting departments together, combining institutions, and so on. Now, this has to happen with a lot of ability to bring people together within the universities. It's very difficult to find even two professors who are working in different areas in a single department coming together and working on a specific subject. Very good research, very good published, papers are published, people move with the best of the people in the world, but not a single product comes out from any of our institutions, including IITs. So therefore, the entire focus of productization, connecting with Make in India, connecting with Startup India must happen with the focus as productization, not so much as paper publication. So therefore, one can use the Fraunhofer model, the Max Planck model of Germany, recreate, reassemble the system. And that's probably one of the way to go in terms of implementations. Finally, we have been talking about 6% GER in the 68 policy. We have spoken about that in the next policy that came somewhere around 80s. And the next the third policy, there were 2 amendments before the current policy. Now, all of them talked about 6% of spend of the GER to be spent on education. But over a period of this time of education policies in the last 50 years, we have spent hardly 3% of that GER. And even within that, the research spending is 0.6%. And to realize all that we are talking about within the NAP, many good ideas are there. In order to realize them, you need funding, you need money. And there is no direction pointed out within the policy as to how that funding can be generated. Probably that is something that we really need to know. And to end this discussion from my perspective, any new policy should have looked at the gap analysis. What was the earlier policy? What were the gaps? Where did we fail? And how do we intend to correct it? The new policy is certainly good, very, very rich in content and very, very rich in reforms. But unless I know what went wrong earlier, how do I correct the system? And these systems are not, monolithic structures. They have a lot of, collected a lot of baggage, collected a lot of, good things around over a period of time. How do you shake that and get things to move in a different direction? But yes, I mean, all the universities, all the people in education will have to collaborate together to make it happen. And I believe maybe if the intentions are the intention is certainly right, and if the correct amount of funding is available, maybe it's all workable. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Mantha. As you rightly said, that you have seen both sides of the coins, being the regulator part, now being part of the university, and you have raised some important challenges where you said that the academic freedom of institutions. Also, when we are talking about imparting education in online mode with digital mode, what about the collaboration aspect and whether government funding will be there or not? And why the medical education has been kept out of this gambit? You have also raised that question. I'm sure other panelists will also touch upon some of the points raised by you and other speakers. With this, let me move to Dr. Kunwar Shekhar Vijendra, Chancellor, Shobhit University. Your take on the impact of national education policy for higher education, Dr. Vijendra. And I request you to kindly limit your speech within 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goswami. And after a series of wonderful speakers and what they spoke, especially Dr. Mantha, he postmortemed everything very nicely. So to speak on national education policy and to find something new is really tough. If I look at this national education policy, I start with the very positive note. When this new education policy was discussed, Honorable Prime Minister mentioned that this is not an education policy only, this is a policy for nation building. And very sincerely, I take on this note that yes, this policy is an important tool of nation building. why I am using this nation building word. Dr. Mantha was telling about the content is very good, intent is very good, the implementation is a question. If we look at the history of any policy, if content is good and intents are good, generally implementation and results are also good. For me, I generally look things in a different perspective. For me, actually, the purpose of a university is nation building. And in nation building, when we talk about nation building, a lot of segments and ecosystems are there. What we were doing from last so many years, I take this new education policy as a historical correction of a historical mistake. What it was that we were focusing completely on creating mechanical human resource with a very myopic vision that yes, we have to create human resource for the purpose of providing human resource to the industry. Today, if I look at this education policy, it is very inclusive indeed. And it is talking more about creating good human beings. It reminds me of Gandhi when he said the education, when somebody asked him what is education for you, and he said that body, soul, and mind, all three needs to be empowered. And this is where this education policy is talking about. You know, India was facing an immense challenge of moving its education policy beyond structure and inputs, enrollment and expenditure to address fundamental questions of vision and inclusivity. We are such a diversified country. Demographically, we are so rich that many times we say that it may be a disaster. But if we look at where vocational education is there, where we are talking about multi-entry, multi-exits, where we are talking about multidisciplinary approach, where we are talking about to increase the gross enrollment ratio, everything has been included in that. There are challenges, yes, that from where funding will come. Definitely funding has to come and it will come. And for research funding, government is talking about investment from GDP, government is talking about on that. Technology integration has to be there. All stakeholders have something to invest in, something to get out of it. When interdisciplinary research or multidisciplinary research, Dr. Mantha was mentioning about, yes, it is a big challenge. We all are seeing in our universities to find two professors, those who can club together and do some meaningful research. Yes, it is a challenge. Like in Shobhit University, if I look at, we are working in agriculture informatics. And generally, this is a big challenge. We have a Center for Agriculture Informatics and E-Governance, and we are not able to find people around those who can club together and do something good. The second challenge, if I look at, generally what we were doing, be it teaching, be it research, it was not socially relevant much. We have to work in that direction, and new education policy, it allows us to do that. At least what I look at this new education policy, that it is giving an opportunity to do experimentation. And this experimentation in education is very important because at the end, the purpose of all higher education institutions is not only to impart knowledge, it is to create new knowledge. It is to integrate and apply the knowledge, what we have to do together. And in that part, new education policy has many promises to see. And one important thing, if I look at the complete education policy holistically, is multi-entry, multi-exit. It can be the game changer. If integration with the industry is there, if curriculum, as Dr. Mantha, again I'm mentioning him, as he mentioned, if yes, industry comes with us and curriculum is developed. We have two universities. One of our universities in a small village of Western UP. And I'm seeing people that they join the university and the dropout is more because many times economical challenges are there. pressures are there. They cannot commit themselves to remain in the university for 3, 4, 5 years. And if this possibility is there, which is given by new education policy, that you come in, you take a certificate, go out, earn not only money, earn experience also in the industry, come back whenever you wish, and you can continue with your education. You can go back and continue. And maybe instead of 3, 4, 5 years, you are getting your degree in a more time, but with more experience and exposure. It is going to be a game changer for gross enrollment ratio. When distance education, online education, digital education we look at, we have Mr. Tabrez Ahmad from Dell Technology with us. Definitely tech and technology has to play a role. But many times I look that this digital education and online education, it is generally not for young boys and girls. It is for people, those who are in education after some experience, those who want to learn something new. This perspective also has been taken care in this education policy, which is really good. Yes, challenges of implementation are there. And why they are there, as India is a diversified country, the same way we all universities are also diversified. There cannot be a common entrance examination. Good, it is good for students maybe, but it cannot be there. Contents are different. We have to have innovation. Innovation cannot be, we cannot become like schools of CBSE board, that everybody is having everything common and we all are doing the same thing and same examination will be conducted. If we have to come, if we have to identify, we have to achieve what is supposed to be achieved by the universities and identification in the world, we all have to be different center of excellence. We have to do things differently. Even in our 2 universities, we are doing different things. One is vertical, goes vertical in research, one is horizontal in nature. Because at one place, demographically and geographically, we need to provide education first. We need to empower people for employment first. At second place, we have to look into the high-end multidisciplinary research. So that has to be integrated, and how it will be integrated, I always say one thing, that universities, those who are like-minded, they have to come together. Not only industry academia interface has to be developed, but academia interface has to be developed more and more. Because many things we are doing in duplicacy. What I am doing in my university, some other universities also doing, and when the research papers will come out, maybe they will be common in nature. A lot of things are happening. We have to come together. Here we have to use this possibility of coming together, and this new education policy, again I am telling, it is very positive indeed. And I take the tweet of Honorable Prime Minister that this is a policy of nation building very seriously, and I call it the gist of this education policy. Yes, if we all can implement it, because implementation cannot be done by the government. We are the stakeholders and we have to implement it. Funding will come, I am sure. I always say to all corporate world, all tech, tech companies, or anybody who has any interaction with education institutes, whenever you have a CSR money, give it to a university. And in Shobhit University, I will complete on that. We are doing an experiment. I'm the panelist. We are on many platforms together. Many times they must have listened in. And what experiment we have done? We have started one SEIZ, not SEZ. And what is this SEIZ? It is a skill, entrepreneurship, innovation zone. What we do that around, a report says that around 26-27% of infrastructure is optimum utilized of higher education institutions. If we look at the full 1-year cycle, be it our labs or classrooms and other institutions. So what we are doing in our university, that we have identified 5 villages, and in every village 5 schools, and in every school 20-25 students. And we have asked them, then when we are not using our infrastructure, you can come and use our infrastructure with your ideas, You have an idea of a startup, please come. You have any idea of innovation or even jugaad, please come in. We will help you for that. And let us work together. And a lot of new things are coming out. So, you know, when I talk about funding and research and all those things, the corporate world, we have so many companies and we are only 1,000 universities. And millions and millions of corporate companies are there, small and big. If they start using their CSR money with the academia, then definitely that crunch of investment will not be there and new innovation, new things will start coming up. So this new education policy has given a lot of possibilities. How we convert that possibility into reality, it depends on us. And I am sure that in coming years, we will see the impact of this new education policy in the complete, on the complete ecosystem very positively. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Kunwar, Shekhar, Vijendra, Chancellor, Shobhit University. And you have touched on a very other dimension of national education policy, as you have referred to Prime Minister statement that it's a nation building exercise. Let's not look at national education policy mere as a education policy, but a nation building exercise. And you've talked about the SEIZ being built in Shobhit University, and also talked about academia discussion more rather than academia industry discussion. That can happen, that will happen, but there need to be a more open discussion between the institutions so that there is a coherent structure where new innovation can be leveraged more and nurtured more. Thanks a lot, Dr. Vijendra. With this, we move to Rajita Kulkrani, President, Trustee University. And I think Rajita Kulkarni has got a different perspective. I must ask her that we're talking about from the perspective of running an education institute, higher education institute, what can be beneficial for the ecosystem and everything. What about the students? I want to ask you about what should be the student perspective seeing at national education policy vis-a-vis higher education, because I know, I think Trustee University has come up with a contemplative and behavioral faculty, perhaps one of the first in the world in line with NEP. So your take on that, Rajita.
Please unmute, madam. Unmute yourself.
Rajita ji, can you unmute your
Yes.
mic, please?
Pardon. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Souvik. Thank you. And really great to be with all friends and colleagues on this panel. We have met each other virtually many times, thanks to the COVID in the past few months. And I think a lot has been said about the NEP. And I think we are more or less on the same, on the same thought process that in content, in intent, the NEP is great. It has come at a time in the history of our country where I think we are at an inflection point. Our Prime Minister, as Dr. Kunwar mentioned, is speaking and having aggressive policies on nation building, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and all of the other things, Startup India, Skill for India, all of those are manifestations of what we as India can emerge in terms of knowledge superpower, in terms of, in terms of the soft power from the other fields that comes to India. And I think the NEP comes at a time for us, therefore, very opportune. I also feel that there are so many good things in the NEP that if implemented, I think one of the earlier speakers said that even if we implement 50% of that, I think we are home and dry. But currently, I wish we have more panels on how to implement, because I think the time of speaking about reflections on the policy, I think we've done enough, and we have to move into implementation mode. A few thoughts, Souvik, to share here from you, since you asked about the student perspective. If you look at all the research that is going on, and if you look at especially the future of work data and papers that are being released, the common understanding is that the top 5 jobs that will be done in 2030, which is not far away in a sense, 10 years go off in a jiffy. The top 5 jobs are not even known today. So if the top 5 jobs that come up for 2030 are not even known to us as humanity today, then we don't know what the skills that are required to do those jobs. Then how are we going to prepare our students with those skills which are still unknown to us? This is, I must say, I think I shared this with Dr. Mantha in one of the previous panels. This is a positive anxiety, Dr. Mantha, always keeps me awake. That are we teaching the kids what they need to know for the future they are going to be faced with? The pandemic has woken us up from a state of stupor, I think, as all of us have experienced. It has compelled us to do things which we never expected we would do. Any of us would have not said we would be able to go 100% online in 2 years, let alone 2 or 4 days. And we did that. So the pandemic is also revealing to us different realities about the way we live, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we entertain. And that is going to shape the world for future. I don't think we are going back to the world that was pre-February. We may go back a few steps, but I think we stand changed forever. So a few thoughts for all of us, and Dr. Kunwar and I, we have also spoken about this a lot, that we always talk about collaborations when we say international collaborations mostly, but I think India is such a huge and rich country of possibilities that we have to look at collaborations amongst ourselves. So a few points from me. Number one is the point on the skills I made. So NEP, 100% NEP, no NEP, as higher education institutions, how can we come together to really brainstorm, to really do some, for, crystal ball gazing on what else we need to do for our students, what else we need to teach them, whether we teach them physics and dance together, or whether we teach them only chemistry and biology. It doesn't matter the combinations, as long as what they learn makes them capable of conducting themselves in life, becoming economically self-sufficient, and progress as they wish to. So that is one positive anxiety always that I have in mind, that do we know what we need to teach our students? Number two, coming from the focus on NEP on the multidisciplinary aspect, this is something very close to my heart personally. I always feel that our education system, and me included as a product of our education system, have more focus on left brain, and you see as it goes ahead in life, what brought you to a certain point necessarily doesn't take you from there ahead. And all of us who do leadership positions, and all of us who are doing positions of responsibility, know that we need full brain equilibrium, we need full brain engagement to be able to conduct any job successfully. I think that is something which is not a big focus for all of us as education institutions, and that is something, therefore, I am very happy from that has been outlaid in the NEP. Students might be compelled to choose multidisciplinary modes of education. When things are new, you want to make sure you don't miss out on something. And if that be the case, I think it is great. Let a child learn statistics and music. Let a child learn biology and, pot making, pottery. Let him learn chemistry and, studio art. Some of it may not be directly applicable in a job market, but I think what it will do to the brain will help the student in a big way. So that is something which is really, which I feel very, very positive about, and I think it will give a good, it will give a good foundation to our students. That is number two. Number three, previous speakers have also spoken. I think our interaction with the industry today is more or less linear. Who we produce as the output of our students becomes the input for the industry. I think we need our relationship to be more circular. And it's good to see one representative from the private sector here. Souvik, it is my personal request that in future we should have an equally balanced panel, because they are the recipients of who we produce. And if we don't produce what they want, there is what is the point of us doing what we are doing? Just today, we did an arrangement with an organization which is now going to become a part of the selection of the students we take. and a part of therefore training them. And then ultimately, you know, these get employment. Now, this is a full circular relationship. So the industry gets what they want as a part of the selection and the training process. So they reduce the time and money they spend on training. We produce what they want, and ultimately the student benefits because he is getting what will ultimately serve him good when he gets out of our institution. I think we need to do more of that. And it's great Dr. Hiranandani is here also. He's a big advocate of this. And I'm hoping that through your platform, Souvik, we are able to do some good collaborations in this direction. That's number 3. Number 4 is the whole discussion on flexibility. The pandemic has already shown us that, you know, we can be in, you know, Delhi today and for lunch, and in, you know, I don't know, in Durban for tea, and, you know, Detroit for dinner. And it has increased our productivity. I think it has increased the productivity also of our students. So I foresee that, as said in the NEP on the digital and the online learning, I think this is going to be an explosion. We were already doing, and I'm really happy if we can do some think tanks. Dr. Chitkara has spoken about it in some of the previous panels. I have been with her. We need to brainstorm. I mean, who knows? Tomorrow we might need to teach students only one phone to phone, maybe at midnight, because that's when they are awake the most. So we, you know, maybe wean them away from Netflix for a few hours, but that's when their mind can take what they want to learn. Today we have a more or less standard mechanism. We start classes at X time, end them at Y time. I think that stands to be disrupted even more. Anytime, anyhow learning. For any duration. NEP is anyways putting the any duration aspect quite out there. So like Dr. Kunwar said, if it helps people in the class B or rural areas of India to come in and go out and, you know, make themselves financially more self-sufficient to take their education, I think it might be a game changer. But today, look at a university like NUS. It's one of the finest examples of lifelong learning. Now, if you are 70 years old, Dr. Hiranandani spoke about 70. I think he's one of the youngest 70 I know. And, you know, at 70, you have a class that you can actually enroll into. Now, that doesn't exist so much in India. And I think that is the time that we need to think about it. Anytime, anyhow, any duration learning, any age learning. Because I think, you know, COVID aside, the medical research shows that our average lifespan is going to 100 years. And we will land up all having at least 6 different careers. So the time is gone that we say we learned at 20, graduated at 21, and it will last me till I am 80. Dr. Hiranandani spoke about it himself. In the last probably 30 months, he has learned more than in 30 years. And that's true for all of us. We are seeing this in our families. So I think as higher education leaders, it is our responsibility to see how we are making that more center of plate, more center, more mainstream, to do programs for the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, because that is a very big student target market that I don't think we are really looking at. So that's my next point from a student point of view. And to honor the time limit, my last point from a student point of view is mental health and happiness. You know, the pandemic has shaken us up about this matter. All of us in our families, in our workplaces, are dealing with people, with colleagues, with family members, friends who are fighting with it. I mean, to be honest, we must all be fighting with it ourselves. This has been a tough time. So when we are giving education, are we only stuffing our kids with information? Because to be honest, how many of us remember what we learned in the economic class, in 11th standard, wherever we studied? I mean, very little. But if things happened that shaped our character and our personality, and if we got tools that helped us deal with the state of our mind, to help us make ourselves more resilient, I think that is the bottom line of the world today. That will continue to stay. Bill Gates recently, in a very famous interview he gave, said that he doesn't expect half of the work to come back to work. So that means half of the work will continue to be done from home and away from work, whether it is not in offices, so away from work. And that has its own implications. And, you know, social isolation is an implication, lack of, just the happiness hormone that gets created because of social connection doesn't exist in our lives as much as it did 8 months ago. So how do I deal with those situations? I think these are things we have to really equip our students with. And just, sorry, one last point is, again, in the pandemic, with the number of job losses, you know, just 2 days ago, KLM laid off 5,000 of their employees just because of the COVID, for no fault. And the CEO stood there to say bye to each one of these 5,000 employees. Now, this is the reality of the world. If a person has stayed 20 years in an airline industry, does he or she have a skill left anymore to conduct himself in any other industry if that industry itself was to go flat, which is happening today in hospitality, which is happening today in tourism, which is happening today in the airline industry, and who knows which other industries might become a victim of that. So to be able to help our students nourish, learn the skill of enterprise. Dr. Hiranandani will agree with me. He is again in ASOCHAM. I have heard him with my husband. He has been with him on many panels, Ajay Bagga, Dr. Hiranandani. And you have spoken so much in the pandemic time about how many SMEs in India have gone bust because of the pandemic. Now, one is the spirit of enterprise, and second is the ability to bounce back given these kind of events, black swan events that happen. So I think, again, we as institutions have that responsibility to not just create students, produce students who can get jobs, but also to nourish the character and the skills of the students so they can create jobs. In our university, we have a big focus on that, as I'm sure it is in all my friends' universities here. And you know, the attention to community, Dr. Kunwar spoke about this 5 villages, what he's doing. I think all of us need to do that because we are no longer...
Rajita ji, sorry to interrupt you. If you can kindly wrap up because we're running short of time now. 3-4 speakers are left. So if you don't mind, we can wrap it up here and move to the next speaker.
Yeah, but, don't cut me like that. One sentence and I will close it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think these are all the aspects we need to look at, and I'm looking forward, Souvik, that we create some think tanks and some task forces coming out of such panels that we can take them ahead from an implementation execution point of view. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely, Rajita Kulkrani, and I must inform you that the whole aim of creating this knowledge sharing platform is that the divergent views come together, best of the minds come together, and not only about discussing, because we focus on the outcome of this conference that will come up with an event report, and that event report will be shared with all the stakeholders from the education ecosystem itself, so that an action can be taken based upon the discussion on these 3 days. And as we have said that we should have more industry presentation in our future planning of conferences. We'll certainly have, but for now, taking cue from what you have said, let me introduce to you Mr. Tabrez Ahmad, Group Director, Government Affairs and Public Policy, Dell Technology. He has been a digital transformation leader for many years now. We're glad to have Mr. Tabrez Ahmad with us. Let's have a Dell Technologies perspective on higher education. Your take on that, Mr. Ahmad.
Thanks, Souvik. And I'm really honored to be in such an August gathering. From the way industry thinks, so I will look at this question also from that point of view. But before going there, I must congratulate the government to come up with very good policy, no doubt about it. I'm also happy that in India, when it comes to education, there is always a controversy. So when NEP came, I was really worried that which new controversy is coming. Luckily, there is no controversy on that. That's a good point. And probably because government, earlier Congress government was working on it, and good that BJP government understood the importance of education and they announced it. So it's very peaceful way of coming up with very visionary policy. So everything till now, very good. Now, before I go to NEP, I want to look at how the world is changing and understand it very clearly, okay? And then look at NEP from that point of view. clearly the pace of innovation or disruptiveness is huge. The more we understand, we realize that little we know what is the pace. Okay, so that's the we have to be very clear on that. Second is there are multiple technologies and all competing and racing with each other and trying to change the world. Each technology, without getting into that detail, has potential to make the world upside down, and there are multiple. Okay, so imagine how much will be the disruption. And one common theme running across is that there are interdisciplinary of technology also. And the way technology is going in other area, for example, technology in retail, technology in healthcare, technology in education, there is a reverse also happening. And we have to be mindful of that to understand how we have to bring our student to face the new reality. And that is, for example, just to highlight one or two, ethics is becoming very important when it comes to technology. Okay, psychology becomes very important when it comes to technology. Okay, and there are many. So everybody talks about technology going in different vertical. I am adding that reverse is also true. And we have to be mindful when we are talking about, for example, natural language processing algorithm. It has to do a lot with social sciences, similarly facial recognition, similarly anything to do with language, translation, or whatever you think of. So reverse is also true. Having said that, I want to also look at what is from employment point of view, what is the trend? Clearly, a STEM education is increasing at double the rate. Okay, and it's because computing has become all the more important today for all sectors. Okay, and that's why it's very important to think of that how it can our students be ready for the future job. Okay, it's critical. The second is lifelong learning. Everybody talked about it. For business, the outside environment is so disruptive that unless until we keep on upgrading our skill regularly, we are obsolete. And I have done 3 masters, okay, in business, in law, and technology. And still, I need to go to MIT time and again to upgrade my skills. So that's the challenge we are facing. Education has to be very personal today. Personalization of education, that's very important, and technology can really address that. We are developing system where academic institution can really address each student and treat them differently. Today, all of you have experienced it. Google treat you differently, right? So for Google, it could be 7 billion or 9 billion people. They know exactly and give treatment exactly accordingly. The another trend I find is that online education. So the campus is becoming, having a serious challenge through online education. All these challenges are there. And at the same time, from government point of view, democratization of skill and knowledge is another challenge which is cutting across. So these are the ground reality. Now we look at how our NEP is doing, okay? And I want to really highlight a few things which earlier some of the speakers have said, but I want to look at it quite differently. So some of the speakers were saying that there is a credit system that you can get, you do 1 year and you get certification, you do 2 years, diploma and degree at things like that. I look at it from industry point of view that this gives an opportunity to manage the wrong selection of course or to fail. So if the students are, educated and given this, framework where they can fail. So I enroll myself in engineering and I realize it's not for me. I do it 1 year, come back and do something else. Maybe it's a social science or maybe economics or whatever, psychology. So this education policy is helping a student and not letting them repent, but have the courage to say, hey, I made the wrong choice and I want to correct it. So it's allowing a student to fail. And that's very important. In industry, we know, and I worked in a startup at Flipkart also briefly, and I know the venture capitalists really encourage entrepreneurs to say, I fail, and wind the business and start something new. This is one. Second is the 4-year when the research PhD is embedded in, and that's very important. And interdisciplinary, the way industry looks at and the way I look at is the creativity, because most of the routine work will be done by computer for sure. Okay. So where is the job, new job creation? And new job creation will be when we look at things, issues creatively and bring solution. And to achieve that, unless until we are interdisciplinary, we will not be able to achieve. This education policy gives us that enablement or empowerment. Okay, and I'm looking at each slightly differently from my previous speaker, panelist. The another point is, people talked about 6% allocation of budget. Okay, this is very good. But I'm not sure that it's good enough to meet the challenge which we are facing. This is one. And second, what we allocate or intend to spend and actual spend, there is always a difference. I was in healthcare for a long time, and I've seen that allocation for healthcare happens around 2%, 3%, but actual spend, if you look at state also, because education and health is a state subject also, actual spend is less. So actual spend used to be, I'm talking about 2014, 15, 16, when I was in healthcare and working for 44 multinational pharma companies, it used to be 1.8, 1.9, that's all. So actual spend is very important. And why I'm highlighting, because if you look at what B.E.S.T is, today the education loan is in tune of $1.5 trillion in US. We should not have the similar kind of situation where our education loan is becoming a burden on our student community. So these are some of the aspects where I find that our new education policy is really doing well, but it's very important to relook at our education policy, and not after a period of 10 years, because in 10 years, things will be completely different. So it's important that maybe every 2 years, we look at it, develop new curriculum, develop new collaboration. And as ma'am was saying, that, you know, industry and academic collaboration, academic to academic collaboration, academic and say, for example, a startup collaboration, because startup need is altogether different. It's very important. So all these relooking and learning from it should be done at shorter interval, not the way we have, you know, brought in new education policy now. And to address that, what we do as Dell is we are working with a lot of state government. For example, Andhra, we have just concluded, where we are offering a student of Andhra courses in data science, courses in analytics, cloud, and things like that. And these are online courses at their own time, but upgrading their skill. Even if the person has come from engineering background, the person has to upgrade the skill. So this should be continuous process, and we are doing with a lot of state, a lot of association. Second, we are doing a kind of policy hack, and this policy hack was for teachers, for example. What teacher face the difficulty? There are a lot of policy hack for students, but we focused on teachers. And not only in India, we have done in India, we have done in APAC, we have done in Europe, and try to learn from it, that what is the new requirement. We are also working on bringing industry-wide collaboration together, where academic will also be playing a role. So a lot of such things we have to do to really be ahead or be relevant. And I feel, I must also say it at the end, that, you know, for us, it's an easy job, okay? But when you are in academics and you are doing a kind of creating value add and bringing a student to face the new reality, it's really complex thing. So industry will be very happy to collaborate and, you know, support in any way possible. I know there is a shortage of time, so let me stop here. There are a few more thoughts, but I don't want to get into that. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mr. Tabrez, the Group Director, Government Affairs and Public Policy, Dell Technologies. And I was quite inclined to hear what you've said, that ethics and psychology of technology and personalization of technology, personalization of education, and how technology can be an enabler for that. and how Dell technology is actually making a difference by upgrading skills by imparting online various courses in various upgradation of skill sectors, technology sector by partnering with various state governments. That's quite interesting. And as you have said, that industry will be happy to collaborate with academia and government. I think this panel itself have the higher education leaders and technology leaders like you. And I'm sure off the line, you people will be discussing more about how you both can collaborate together for making a better future for our student fraternity. Thanks a lot, Mr. Tabrez Ahmad, for, I really like that when you said the ethics and psychology of technology. Thanks a lot. With this, I move to Mr. Professor A. Govardhan, Pro Vice Chancellor and Rector, Jawaharlal Nehru Technology University, Hyderabad. I think he has to leave early, so I'll just take his perspective before moving on to Dr. Rupa Vasudevan from B.E.S.T Innovation University. Professor Govardhan, your take on higher education, or what kind of innovation Jawaharlal Nehru Technology University, Hyderabad is doing, keeping in mind the future of higher education in India.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goswami, all the esteemed panelists and distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to you all. As rightly mentioned by all the previous speakers, the very essence of the education is to provide the holistic education, though we call it as a education, which may not be synonymous as a holistic education. And I will have to say explicitly that a holistic education is required with life skills, with a blend of humanity and service motive. So that is where a new education policy is aimed at, in tune with the Industry 4.0 and Education 4.0. As rightly mentioned by all the previous speakers, some of the important and salient features of our new education policy is about self-reliant India, which is aiming at, and sustainable development goals, including the UN defined 17 sustainable goals. One of them is the quality education and research, innovation and infrastructure. And the other important feature is education as an economy booster. Then internationalization of the higher education. Then we see the digitalized pedagogy and classrooms, a layered accreditation system, and equipping our teachers with the latest technology and education methodology. So these are some of the important features which we see in the National Education Policy 2020. But nevertheless, when we look at the whole education system, they may not be explicitly mentioned based on the past experience that we have. So what is essentially required is now to understand the entire philosophy of this new education policy and the implementation, the roadmap, what is to be set from the national perspective, and also from the perspective of the various educational institutions. So that is the goal for everybody to set the the path for that. In my opinion, I think a review mechanism is required once in every 2 years. What is the progress that we made and where we stand now? So this kind of continuous review mechanism would definitely help us to to align our whatever the objectives that we have. We can do that. So the other important aspect is alignment of the various educational systems. Like you have the school education, you have the +2 education, you have the university education system. So unfortunately, they are working in silos. But there could be a kind of mechanism, a board which should be set up at the national level and also at the respective levels. Let's say a university representative should also be there in the school education system. Let there be a school education representative be in the university education system board, so that a kind of exchange can happen and the ground realities can be understood in terms of the implementation. So that is what is essentially required. And if you look at the the kind of institutions that we have, so a wide spectrum of institutions exist in a country like India. You have on one side the extremely polished and the top class, world class institutions like IITs. You have NITs and universities and other institutions. So if you can really establish a kind of cluster based on the regions. Let us say instead of Telangana, we can say that IIT Hyderabad, we have NIT Warangal, then we have universities like JNTU Hyderabad and Usmania universities. So if we can really, form some kind of clusters based on the regions, then that would really enable us to understand each other. What are the best practices that we can have? So how best we can exchange the quality aspects and best practices, that would, I'm sure that would really help us. And also a kind of discussion, debates, workshops should be conducted at the institutional level to understand the very emphasis and essence and philosophy of this NEP 2020 among the faculty members, among the students and all these stakeholders. Unless and until this is done, we'll not be able to really appreciate the spirit of NEP 2020. And given a time, some kind of best practices, what are the best practices being adopted by the top class universities, then that can be emulated with other institutions. So let us have a kind of platform that is created to understand what are the best practices, and over a period of time, let us say in a given period of 2 or 3 years, let there be some best cases. Okay, if you look at the best cases, what we have been, you have found across the country, then those best cases can be, shared by other institutions, so that that can become easy for other institutions, so without wasting their resources and energies. So that would definitely help. The other important aspect is about the gross enrollment ratio. The target is set, the 50% by 2035, without compromising the quality of education. So that can happen only in the increase in a gradual way. So how best we can really have like by 2010, sorry, by 2030, what could be possible? By 2025, what could be possible? By 2035. So if you can really have some kind of intermediate targets, then without compromising the quality of education, we will be able to increase the gross enrollment ratio. I'm sure that would help all the academic institutions. The other important aspect is about the accreditations. We listen to some casualties even when it comes to the QS ranking, Times ranking. Though we are producing the best engineers, among the top universities, like you look at MIT, Stanford, or other top universities or Ivy League universities, our IITs are producing the best. Like you have the CEO of Google, you have CEO of all kinds of important top class industries. Still, we are lagging in the QS ranking, let's say. So where is the gap? What is that we are missing in terms of the documentation or in terms of the accreditation process? Some kind of analysis if we can really make. So I think that would really boost our morale of our educational institutional representatives, and a kind of navigation exchange should happen at the top level policy makers and also at the ground level who are going to implement the policies, particularly the stakeholders like students, teachers, all the stakeholders of the educational institution. So let us have a kind of discussion on the global infrastructure. What is the global infrastructure that is available across some of the top countries, and what is the best infrastructure available in the top class universities, and what is missing in our Indian context. So if you can really concentrate on that, then what is that we already have, then what is missing, and what is to be achieved in those lines. So what is to be acquired in those lines. I think that would definitely create a kind of guideline for at the national level to the government and also to various stakeholders of the entire system. I'm sure all these things will definitely open the doors to deliberate more on this. But certainly NEP 2020 is a wonderful way and a path for us to achieve the holistic education in the long run. So with these few remarks, I once again appreciate efforts made by all of us, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Professor A. Govardhan, Pro Vice Chancellor and Rector, Jawaharlal Nehru Technology University, Hyderabad. I think if I take the crux of what you said, you actually focused on or highlighted the importance of sharing of best practices among the institutions, so that the NEP, the spirit of NEP, is implemented in a right way. That has been the crux of Professor Govardhan's speech. I'm sorry I'm playing the role of devil's advocate because I have to remind all of you that cut down your speeches, so don't mind for that. That's my duty, to limit all of your speeches in a certain period of time. With this, I move to Dr. Rupa Vasudevan, Chancellor, B.E.S.T Innovation University. Dr. Rupa has been an educationist, social entrepreneur, investor, and she has also been one of the 10 academicians in General and Executive Council of Karnataka State Higher Education Council. Also, she has helped Karnataka government in bringing out their ICT policy. With this, I'll come to Dr. Rupa, since you have been part of Karnataka's ICT planning body. Dr. Rupa Vasudevan, my question to you will be that already we have covered various things of NEP. What, according to you, will be one of the most important part when we talk about the digital aspect of NEP, the online or the digital integrations for making education more and more accessible? Your take on that?
Thank you, Souvik, and I understand your predicament. Thank you to the organizers, and it's been extremely enriching today listening to the eminent panelists here. For Souvik, to answer your question, I would like to start with what education has been to India, to our country, and what as a civilization we have followed. We've never believed education as a transmission of knowledge and skill sets in a formal structure. To begin with, we've always covered knowledge coming from all levels. It comes from any innovator, creator, resource person, and it always received a platform for showcase and credit. And there was always a culture of transdisciplinary studies, and a university, you could see all the massive universities that have been there, and they've always been an enabling space. They used to always foster multidisciplinary academic studies, and research used to draw upon theoretical, empirical, and methodological resources that used to cut across disciplinary boundaries. Now, what has happened is this uniformity and standardization, past 70 years or so, has university affiliated colleges, etc. This was never our structure. It has derailed our systems beyond measure, with absolutely zero flexibility or choice to our students. Now, we all, this is where the National Education Policy by Dr. Kasturi Rangan, I think, and his team has been an absolutely brave attempt in completely overhauling our education systems, transforming it into a very progressive, flexible, and an updated version. Now, like also Mr. Ahmad, who rightly pointed out, see, the workplace right now and for the near future is changing rapidly. It's leaving the age-old traditional educational systems far behind. A certificate from a prestigious university could very well be of negligible value in the job market, because we're speaking here right now about the gig economy. We are speaking about people expecting to take over serious jobs shortly online, which does not require a master's degree, but rather skills and the willingness to work for anyone, anytime, anywhere. This is what we're coming to. Now, as higher education institutions, we need to be supporting the learner to reflect on what is learned, what can be improved, which goals can be achieved, and how to move forward. We need mechanisms in place to acknowledge their skills, award credits, and better prepare students for the job market. Now, we've simplified a lot of existing structure by calling everybody higher education institution rather than saying central, state, private, and deemed. Now, this itself is a huge change from where we come from, but the 50% GER might be a huge challenge, and ICT plays here a very, very important part, because we will need huge depositories of online content, and private players will have a major role in this aspect, because we've not been exposed to the online education or a flipped classroom or a digital tool. Now we've been toying with the idea of flipped classrooms and digital education since about 8 years, and I think most of us very seamlessly integrated into online education just when the corona pandemic happened. the future is with blended learning, and it's not about using digital technologies for teaching and learning, but rather approaching the digital tools from a critical pedagogical perspective. And we need to reach out to large masses of underprivileged here, because that will be a huge challenge when we speak about the digital transformation. Many in India, especially our country, are inaccessible to the digital networks and the digital tools that we are speaking about. So building digital infrastructures, digital content, and building valuable sites for information of knowledge and exchange becomes the responsibility of the higher education institution, and more so the private sector. I think the use of technology, audio visuals, that will help teaching, learning, and research more meaningful and enjoyable with user engagement is what will engage the students online, because engaging students online, we all know now, is a huge challenge. And I think it's a humongous mission that needs immediate attention. And the issues we have in education sector by its very nature is extremely complex. So I think it stands a reason that solutions will need to be multifaceted, and it has to address a range of issues, often several at once. And the impact and success of the implementation plans have to be laid phase-wise. At every level, it has to be monitored and evaluated, with ineffective approaches being improved or immediately replaced. All said and done, I think it's imperative that we collectively remove the constraints, and whatever constraints that stifle the implementation of national education policy, and together make this possible. It's the collective ownership of the society, educators, individual progressive learners, and stakeholders. We have, several educational institutions who are NGOs and whom I am associated with, like Disha Bharat, who are reaching out to 2 lakh and 3 lakh students. So we need to bring together such change makers into the higher education system and collectively make a difference. And that's what NEP also says, collective ownership of the society. I think it's together, it's definitely possible. And I hope I have answered your question. I kept it short for you.
Oh, you made my life easy. Trust me on that. As you have rightly said that there's a famous saying that together we can, together we will, and together we can. You talked about collective ownership of society to make that change happen for transforming higher education. That is quite a different perspective, and I think that's quite insightful. And also, that also talks about that the entire aim of creating this platform is that all the minds come together so that we can discuss and deliberate upon various aspects of education ecosystem spectrum as a whole, be it school education, higher education, and skill education, so that that collective outcome comes together, and on that act can be made so that we can really make an impact on students' life and entire education fraternities way of thinking and education per se. Thanks, Dr. Rupa Vasudevan, Chancellor, B.E.S.T University, for joining us and enlightening us on a vision for how to change the higher education scenario in the country with the collective effort of all the stakeholders. With this, we come to the last speaker of this panel discussion, Professor Naseem, Registrar, Telangana University, Nizamabad. Professor Naseem, a lot has been talked and discussed for the last 1.5 hours. I'll ask you to kindly be crisp and short, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and share with us your vision on how national education policy can change the higher education spectrum of this country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Souvik, Goswami, sir. Good afternoon to all the esteemed dignitaries. I feel honored and very much privileged to be the part of this prestigious conclave on National Education Policy 2020. Many honorable eminent speakers have spoken about NEP 2020 on almost all aspects in a very great manner. I am confident that this national education policy will ensure a pride of place for India in global education sector in the years to come by proper implementation and execution. It is path-breaking and daring right step in rediscovering India's past glory in the field of education. According to father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi ji, if we want to reach real place in this world, we should start educating children. I am sure that the NEP has the potential to produce leaders in various fields at the global level. It is the great collective responsibility, and particularly in this pandemic situation, with an aim to create global citizens with strong Indian roots. I believe that the NEP is truly futuristic education policy that has potential to transform Indian education sector to the league of world-class education systems. I congratulate government for this very good and great policy for implementation. It is the need of the hour. It is very important to maintain quality and constantly updating in tune with the global trends and opportunities. The emphasis of NEP is on how to think rather than what to think. This NEP gives an altogether new direction on how the students are going to be trained to think out of the box and come up with the ideas and technologies to address the local issues and achieve the global scale. The new pattern of 5+3+3+4 rightly emphasizes on the early childhood care, nutrition, and education of the children and reduces stress of board examinations at 10th and 12th standard. It may be recalled, legendary late Mr. Kamaraj Nadar's introduction of midday meal to the school children in Tamil Nadu in 1950s has improved the enrollment ratio and as well as reduced the dropout rate. And now the special focus on early childhood education through NEP 2020 will have equally great impact on the health, nutrition, and educational development of the children. This NEP has touched upon almost all the facets of the education, beginning from early childhood to multidisciplinary education and research universities. In tune with the complexity of the challenges that we in India and the globe faces today, the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach will help come up with the solutions to ameliorate the conditions. NEP's focus is obviously going to be shifted to turning the universities into the centers of excellence in research and development, rather than merely restricting the education to the theory teaching. The idea of National Research Foundation will go a long way in promoting the research and innovation culture in our campuses. I'm sure this NEP is going to be a game changer for education in our country with the efforts of all of us. This will enable the country to emerge as a knowledge economy, as the knowledge superpower, and an international destination for quality education. I can say with total confidence that NEP 2020 is capable of training the students as job creators and wealth creators rather than the job seekers. This will regain the country its place on the pedestal of quality education that contributes for the growth and prosperity. The impact will be great in promoting an multidisciplinary approach in research and education. Huge multidisciplinary universities will emerge and more autonomy will be given to the colleges to emerge as the centers of excellence. The affiliation system will go away. It will be a head start to the universities to compete at the international level. The NEP also envisages establishing a multidisciplinary university in every district of the country. It proposes to achieve 50% gross enrollment ratio in higher education institutions, which is below 30% at present. It also aims to create an additional number of 3 crore seats in higher educational institutions across the country. This makes higher education accessible to more and more underprivileged sections. Emphasis on vocational courses, skill development will ensure the employability of the students. The NEP 2020 will also transform Telangana into a major hub of higher education, as Hyderabad is having a number of research institutes of eminence like Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, Center for DNA and Fingerprinting and Diagnostics, Defense Research and Development Organizations, Defense Research and Development Laboratory, etc. This will need to leverage the NEP 2020 to become the country's education hub. The state governments need to take the lead to implement the NEP 2020 and create an innovative and world-class education ecosystem that meets global standards and improve the ranking of the universities at the global level. And this is highly student-centric. The universities take the initiative to create better awareness about the great initiatives of the NEP 2020 among the students community so as to enable them to leverage the multidisciplinary research and innovation approach. I'm extremely thankful for the opportunity to share my views and thoughts on this concerned topic in this conclave, in this prestigious conclave. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Naseem, Registrar, Telangana University, Nizamabad, for highlighting the importance of national education policy. And very important part you have said that you're seeing national education policy as the game changer for creating job and wealth and taking India becoming a true knowledge economy. Thanks, Professor Naseem, for that. And with that, we have come to the end of a very important session of the second day of Global Education and Skill Conclave, organized by APAC News Network, and host partner is the Collegiate and Higher Education Technical Education Department, Government of Telangana. And as Dr. Rupa was saying, that we all have to take a collaborative approach to make the education a game-changing aspect of life. And when we talk about collaborative approach, let me also thank our partners who have collaborated together to make this conference a success. Let me thank our presenting partner, Kidlam University, co-presenting partner, College Dunia, technology partner, Dell Technologies, powered by partner, Harappa, principal banking partner, ICICI, prime university partner, Ahmad University, university partners, Jawaharlal Nehru Technical University and Telangana University, Big Innovation Center India, career guidance partner, campus crop, academic partner, Chitkara University, associate partner, Flipner, and also our country partners, British High Commission in India, country partner, Austrian government being the country partner, Israel Embassy being the country partner, Embassy of Afghanistan being the country partner, Republic of Malawi being the country partner, Innovation Norway being the country partner, and Nafik Neso, the education body of Netherlands Embassy being the country partner. We thank them. Also, we thank our government supporting partners, B.E.S.T, Uttarakhand government, Telangana State College Education Department, IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, and Sambalpur Task we have, and APSCHE. With this, let me again thank all of our eminent panelists who have been part of this panel discussion on the impact of NEP, National Education Policy for Higher Education. And I'm sure the deliberations made in this session will be of utmost importance when we talk about how to implement NEP in higher education sector in coming months and years. So with this, let me again thank Dr. Madhu Chitkara, Rajita Kulkrani, Dr. Rupa Vasudevan, Dr. Niranjan, Hiranandani, Vineet Gupta, Dr. S.S. Mantha, Dr. Kunwar, Shekhar, Vijendra, Tabrez, Ahmad, Professor A. Govardhan, and Professor Naseem for joining us this